Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the participants, our esteemed guests who have joined us from the industry, our director, Dr. Manasa, our faculty colleagues from our institute, from the Ramya Group of Institutes, members of other B schools, and a lot of other women participants from other NGOs have also joined us in large numbers. I'm still expecting a few more to join. So welcome to this panel discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion being conducted by the Center for Leadership at Ramya Institute of Management. We've been doing some workshops and panel discussions on leadership and other allied areas. So today, this topic being very, very pertinent, and the buzzword is DEI organization. We welcome all the participants. But before we move over to the discussion, we will have our Ramya anthem as a protocol. So I request our participants in the boardroom to kindly stand up for the Ramya anthem. Ramya Institute of Management. We've been doing some workshops.
सकलांतर्यामी हरिणी चाल भजिन्तुम्
ज्ञानं विज्ञानं च भक्तिसहितम्
विनयभूषण
रामय्य समूह संस्थाना
ज्ञान विज्ञान विद्या विनयभूषण रामय्य समूह संस्थाना तारे निहारिते आगले ई मालिके
जयवेन्नुव ई संस्थानके
द्रष्टाररु कट्टिद कनसिन साम्राज्यविदु
दीपदुळु प्रदीपಗಳ ಬೆಳಗುವ ಶ್ರದ್ಧಾ ಸ್ಥಾನವಿದು
ಅರಿವಿನ ದಿಗಂತದಾಚೆಗೆ ಜಿಗಿಯುವ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲವಿದು ಗೃಹ ಗೃಹದಲ್ಲಿ ಗೃಹ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನದ ಸೋಪಾನವಿದು ಮಿತಿಯಿಲ್ಲದ ಅಮಿತ ಜ್ಞಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧನ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರವಿದು ಪ್ರತಿಭೆಯ ಸಾಧನೆ ಮಾಡಲು ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಕೇಂದ್ರವಿದು ಅಜ್ಞಾನದ ಕತ್ತಲೆ ನೀಗುವ ಸುಜ್ಞಾನದ ಸೂರ್ಯನ ರಶ್ಮಿದು
ಜಗದೋದ್ಧಾರದ ಹೊಂಗನಸನು ಹೊತ್ತಿದ ಅರಿವಿನ ತಾಣವಿದು
ಅರಿವಿನ ಹಣತೆಯು ಬೆಳಕನ್ನು ಚೆಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಅಸಂಖ್ಯಾತ ಕಿರಣಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ಹೊರಹೊಮ್ಮಿವೆ ಜಯವೆನ್ನುವ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥಾನಕ್ಕೆ
Thank you, audience. So this discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion is very relevant today from the organization's point of view, academic institutions' point of view, and we are very fortunate to have a dynamic leader in Dr. Manasa Nagabhushnam, our Director, Academics, Research and Administration, who will share her thoughts on this topic. But before that, I'll quickly brief the audience about ma'am's profile, a brief introduction. Dr. Manasa Nagabhushnam is the Director of Ramya Institute of Management. She takes care of our academics, research and administration. She has a vast experience of more than 3 decades as an academician, education leader, researcher, writer and a consultant. She has headed several business schools as Dean and Director. She has been working towards dissemination of the national education policy through her articles, lectures, webinars, and workshops. She's a doctoral guide, and several women scholars have completed PhD under her guidance. With a very inclusive approach, I must highlight this, with a very inclusive approach, she's been providing equal opportunities and understanding the aspirations of faculty and students, and she has transformed institutions and people to achieve success. She has been providing innovative and implementable solutions to transform the culture and governance of educational institutions. With those words, over to you, ma'am, for a brief introduction of the topic. My colleague, Dr. Professor Sanjay Chayade, joins me, welcoming you for the brief introduction, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Padmaja. That was quite a lot about me. Hearty welcome to the guests of today. Ashok Pamidi sir, actually, we wanted to invite you to be on our board, and then some talks happened and further we could not pursue. So we are very happy, fortunate that you have joined us today. And then thank you, Faranjis, if I'm pronouncing it properly. Thanks a lot for joining this program, which is very much relevant, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because Padmaja was talking about national education policy, and even the policy tries to cover these sides, how educational institutions have to bring about this, so that the final, whatever we are looking at as outcome, so those outcomes could be probably achieved. And then thanks, Mr. Uma Shankar, you have joined. And I really like the way you have put your background, the power of diversity. So it's really meaning quite a lot, because more than words, so whatever, what we speak, apart from that, what we are, okay, so that reflects quite a lot. And I'm extremely happy that all our Padmaja took a lot of initiative in organizing this particular program, the entire team of Center for Leadership. And we also have all our faculty who have joined, and other people from faculty and students from other institutions have also joined. Very good. It's a very good thing. And India is an example for what we are talking, diversity, equity, and inclusion, basically, because so we have been talking about unity in diversity right from the day we started learning, right? When we started going to schools, we have talked about this. But as individuals, we all come with a lot of background, right? We come from different religions, different castes, different geographical backgrounds, and then we have our own many things which have been formed through our past experiences, and hence we become very different. Okay, so this kind of a thing, when diversity comes in an organization, in a house, or in any place, talking about diversity even in families, if you look at that, immediately these acceptances becomes a big issue, and it acts as a very big block in running the organizations towards a common goal, or wherever we want to march towards, so all these become a real big block. So until and unless we are removed of all these blocks that we ourselves, which we have framed and formed over a period of time, because all these learnings, whatever we get, it should just go with the flow, and that has to become a part of an experience which gives you a positive side to it. But it does not happen that way. It becomes blocks that when we believe in something, that belief itself becomes a block. So this in organizations, which is very much required, that if we have to walk towards something in commonly shared vision, or working towards a common goal, we need to have this kind of an inclusion, equity. At the same time, diversity is very much required. So we have seen that if we have a diverse group, so thinking is very much different, and the way we contribute will also be, the learning will also be much better. So we have seen in our own institutions, like where if you have a diverse crowd of students, the learning curve is much faster actually. So it doesn't take a longer period of time. The learning curve shortens if you have a diverse student crowd. Similarly, faculty also. But our tendencies are like birds of the same kind flock together. We try and find out what is the common thread between us and try to get together, but that should not become a stumbling block for our growth. So this is what I feel with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So today we are in an inclusive society. Even if you look at, I was just thinking about our own ancient literature. If you look at that, Bhagavad Gita itself talks about the Atma, the concept of Atma, which is beyond gender, which is there is no class, there is no caste, there is nothing actually. So whatever background that we are talking about, the society brings in, all that is not there at a different level. When we look at a higher level, you know, so all these differences are not there. So if you forget all these differences, certainly we can contribute better in terms of growing as a group, as a community. So this is what I feel. And at Ramaya also, we believe in these principles, and the basic 5 values that we have stated also talks about bringing this kind of a inclusion within the organization. So I'm sure that we practice this, not only talk about this, but in our own institution, we practice it, and then so that we all feel or work in oneness to reach better heights. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving over to the discussion, before we start with the formal introduction of the segments, I will formally introduce our speakers and panelists for today's discussion. Kiran, shall we move ahead? There's a slideshow there. So our first panelist is Mr. Ashok Pamidi. He's a startup evangelist and advisor, former CEO of NASCOM Foundation. Mr. Pamidi is a well-known name and needs no formal introduction, nevertheless, for the benefit of the audience. He's a purpose-driven leader with over 30 years of cross-functional experience in IT, diversity and inclusion, and social development space. He has led NASCOM Foundation by aligning, scaling, sustaining initiatives that have propelled the industry in achieving its goals of social transformation and impact through technology. At NASCOM, where he spent more than 5 years, he wore multiple hats at leadership levels, redefining small and medium enterprises portfolio, NASCOM's 80% clientele base to newer heights by helping them scale businesses globally through global trade and opportunities. He has also strategized NASCOM's regional member outreach to expand and include businesses in non-tier 1 locations by liaising with government authorities for ease of doing business. As a 30-year IT industry veteran, Ashok has worked with IBM as a geo-expansion leader and HP Compaq Digital as a transformation leader. He has the acumen of investing in building and nurturing people, managers, and teams that hold up the organization's vision. He has expertise in both strategy and operations management, incorporating the right system and processes to deliver a seamless and transparent experience for all the stakeholders with the underlying principle of trust and collaboration. As far as his academic credentials go, he holds a Bachelor in Engineering degree from Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Technology, Bangalore, and a PG Diploma in Business Administration from St. Joseph's College, Bangalore. He's currently an advisor to 5 startups and in the board of IT standards, that is BITES, Government of Karnataka. Welcome, Mr. Ashok. Thank you so much for joining us. Moving over to our next speaker, we have Ms. Farangis Chaudhary. Her profile will be read by my colleague, Professor Sanjay Chari.
Ms. Farangis Chaudhary is head of diversity and inclusion at Mindtree. She has got about 25 years of experience in the IT industry. She has held various roles in L&D, that's learning and development, knowledge management, organizational culture, and of late she has been leading from the front in realizing Mindtree's DI objectives. Having spent over a decade in various technical roles, she understands the IT sector and what it means to create inclusive environments. Effecting change involves affecting the culture of an organization. Along with her D&I charter, Farangis also plays a key role in bringing forth the stories that shape and influence organizations' culture and creates a common identity. And we look forward to hearing that definitely. Farangis is a strong champion of DI, and as she believes that celebrating the harmony of diverse thoughts and ideas help an organization become truly global and flourish in the societies in which they play a part. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Farangis. And the third panelist for today's discussion is Mr. Umashankar Kandaswamy, Senior Vice President and also founding team member of Avatar. Umashankar Kandaswamy is currently the Vice President, Sales and Relationship, founding team member of Avatar. He is an expert recruiter who holds a master's in public administration from the University of Madras. Umashankar is an electronics and communication engineer and has done his MDP from IIM Ahmedabad. With over 20 years of experience in recruitment consulting, Umashankar is a prolific headhunter with over 3,500 closures in his career, comprising of top management, senior management, and reporting to board positions. Currently managing the All India Sales and Relationships for the entire Avatar Group, which is into diversity and inclusion, and also working a lot on women in their careers. Avatar Group for more than 350 companies across industries. Every year, Umashankar, as a personal goal, has been training young generation in the path of leadership and has been invited by many colleges to be the chief guest to address the young graduates and postgraduates. Welcome, Mr. Umashankar, and we look forward to your views pertaining to students and their ideas about DE&I.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. With that, we move over to the breakup of this panel discussion. We've divided the panel discussion into 3 segments. So the first segment would focus and highlight about the key factors and understanding the basics and concepts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the second segment deals about the practical implications and how is it that organizations are trying to catalyze this concept of DE&I through various case studies and examples and findings. And the third segment is understanding DE&I in the new normal. During the COVID and post-pandemic, how is it that organizations are going to look at DE&I in the new normal? So those are the 3 segments, and we have questions for all the 3 panelists for each of these segments. So my first question to Mr. Ashok Pamini, before I read out the question, it's already been put out in the slide there. Mr. Ashok, all of us are now interchanging these words, diversity, equity, and inclusion. For example, when I was also doing my little bit of homework on understanding this topic, and I remember discussing with you and Farangis also, that how do we understand equity and how do we understand equality and what overall is the essence of DE&I? With that concept in mind, how would you explain the basics and understanding about this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And the second part to this question is, what has influenced your thinking around DE&I and motivated you to get involved in being an advocate for change, given the diverse and vast experience that you've had? Over to you, Mr. Ashok.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Padmaja. And at the outside, I would say it's a fabulous initiative of the management, Rama Institute of Management. And Dr. Manasa, I would say that kudos to you, because I have not seen in my entire tenure many universities, I have been in the board of other universities as well. And this is a topic where few of the universities do talk, but they don't make it a big point to ensure that they invite consultants and members from the industry to actually sensitize the entire your academia as well as the students on this important subject of DEI. Now, with your permission from Dr. Manasa and Padmaja and other faculty, I would like to explain the DEI concept purely from a student's perspective, okay, so that they can understand it better. So if you look at, I'm asking this question to students, then you go back to school days and college days, right? And I've asked you, what do you like about school and college and what do you prefer? The obvious answer, you will say, I like college better because it gives you an opportunity to dress the way, let's say what Umashankar's background is in various colors, right? So you will find that, your colleagues actually are, dressed in a very different fashion. They come from various cities. They come from various, in fact, Ramaya College must be having students from all over the country. In fact, some of this, especially in engineering, you must be having people from other parts of the world itself. Now that is diversity. Having, different sets of people from different communities, from different language speaking, the culture, and so on, and boys, girls, all genders, right? All put together is what we call it as diversity. Now, going back to, the real, day-to-day life, and if you just travel 200 kilometers, any direction you take, okay, from Bangalore, let's say, you just go 200 kilometers, you'll find a different set of people. They speak different language, they eat differently, they dress differently, right? And their socioeconomic conditions too are different. And that's diversity for us. So what it essentially means is, as a country, as a nation, as a college, we have actually adopted diversity, right? Diversity is there. It's built into our DNA. We have there, we have all sorts of people, and we have been sort of, living together for centuries. So that is diversity. Now, equity and equality, as Professor pointed out, is a different concept. Now, imagine that in the same class, okay, you have some people who are tall and some people who are short, right? You have that, all of them. Then the professor is teaching. And then what happens? There's a short boy like me, for example, is in the back. He can't see the board, right? So the teacher, he says, ma'am, I can't see the board. So then what the teacher does is, or the professor does is, she says that all the short boys and girls come and sit in the front row, okay? So that they can be able to see the board. That's equity for you. Now, going back to, let's say the corporate world, what happens is, there are, those people, let's say they are using a wheelchair, right? So you give what we call it as reasonable accommodation, barrier-free environment, so that the wheelchair is actually, they are able to wheel inside a college premises, okay? And they are able to sit and listen to the lectures just like any other normal human being. Now, that giving that wheelchair or giving that particular what is needed to be successful is equity, right? This is equity. Now, I can give some more example, and some of you, if you have traveled in lifts, right? And if you touch the lift in many good places, okay, you'll see that there will be some dotted, in every number 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll find that is actually in Braille, okay? And that is what we call it as an equity, so that you create a reasonable accommodation and ensure that it's barrier-free environment. And that's what happens in most of the good firms today. They ensure that even the lifts, okay, they are having it in Braille, and they also make an announcement so that they know that whether you have to either reach the first floor, the doors are opening or not, so that the person with visual impairment are able to get out. That is equity. Now, equality is basically treating all of them in the same way. Now, let's talk about an example. Would be that, it's a college. Let's take a college, right? And Professor Manasa decides that the various departments that you have, right, they get equal money, let's say 10,000 rupees they get to organize an event like this. All of them are same. That is equality. In a corporate world, when you join, all of them are paid equally. That's equality, because you treat everybody one and the same. There's no difference whatsoever, whether you're a boy or a girl or a person with some disability or from any other community, right? That is, if your gender orientation is different, it doesn't really matter in the corporate world, or even for us, for that matter, in a very advanced country now like India, we treat everybody same, right? So that is the equal opportunity we give. So that is equality. You're treating everybody one and the same. Okay, so now moving to the next concept, that is inclusion. Now let me go back to the college days. Now let's say that all of you decide, okay, your class of management decides to go to a picnic. Okay, all of you go to a picnic. And there, let's say, I don't want to take a name out here, there's so many girls out here. So let's say that girl has had some misunderstanding or she doesn't like somebody, right? But even then she invites them and they all play, let's say, passing the pillow. Okay, they all sit down together and passing the pillow is played. And there you have the people whom you don't like, people you have fought with them last week, but all of you are joining together and you enjoy the picnic together and you play a beautiful game of passing the pillow. That is inclusion, because you have included everybody. And to make the matters even more thing, you have included even, let's say, a person in a wheelchair too. And even he or she plays the passing the pillow. And even your professors also join. That is totally, totally inclusive. And that is how the world is, right? In the coming back to the corporate world, we actually all the corporates do is diversity is taken for granted. It's much more diverse because they have people from other parts of the world, right? And the world is flat now today, just like we're having this Zoom call. There are people from Australia, from Japan, from China, from US, all of them together working in our same project. That is diversity, right? They're all handling together a same project. And equity is there because some of them can't see, right? Then what they do is they ensure that there is braille language, or there is basically they use a Cortana so that whatever is written on the screen, there'll be screen reader so that he's able to see, or he or she is able to see, right? And it is irrespective of their which region they come, what language they speak. Actually, the mother tongue could be Kannada, could be Chinese, Mandarin, or it could be anything. It doesn't matter. So that is how this entire world is moving towards a very inclusive world. And imagine such a situation that all of us are included in one particular fashion. Then the whole world it becomes a much better place for us to live, right? You can easily go anywhere else you want. You can mingle with them, eat the food what is served, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why everybody in the world looks at diversity, equity, inclusion in a much bigger lens than what it was earlier. So I hope I was being able to try to give that explanation to all the student community out here. So thank you, ma'am. I know, I forgot. What has influenced your thinking? Well, actually, if I go back, I would say it was almost 50 years ago, to be honest with you. And actually, my mother, 50 years ago, please understand, okay? In 50 years ago, if you see Sudha Murthy's, her books, she says, when she did her engineering, there's only one lady, that is she. So my mother too, she did her teacher's training after we were grown up. And I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, she did that, right? So what it essentially means, I would say thanks to my father, because there was something called as women empowerment. He empowered my mother to actually study, and she got first rank. And she was a headmistress in Aurobindo Vidya Mandir here. So what it essentially means is, I learned that actually when this question came, actually, thanks to you, Professor Padmaja, it actually made me think, where exactly the influence was actually my mom, because she actually, taught us, or my father for that matter, who taught us what is women empowerment and both men and women working together to raise our 3 children. So that's one aspect. The second thing, what was very interesting, and that was really the motivation for me to really look at what is women empowerment. And I can also give you one more story. What happened is my elder sister was there and she was in college, I was still in school. But I had to go every day in the evenings to pick her up from some class she was going. I think she was going for shorthand class, and it was at 8:39. And we were staying in almost like a village in those days, okay? And we had to travel or walk 2 kilometers. So I had to go. And I asked my mom, why is it that she's going alone in the daytime, and why in the evening I have to pick her up? Then she told me, because I was still in school, I didn't understand much. No, it's very dark, no lights, etc. And it has to be safe. So you have to bring her back. That made me think in those days itself, oh, women's safety. Okay. And believe it or not, when I had this opportunity to lead diversity and inclusion, one of the first thing which I did is doing POSH workshops left, right, and center. I think I must have done 70 to 80 POSH workshops across the length and breadth of the country. That's one aspect. And in 2013, if you remember, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment and Redressal Act came about when I just had taken over the entire aspects of diversity and inclusion. That's one. Second thing is, what we did is, with the government of Karnataka, we ensured that the entire policy of safe transportation, okay, was actually charted out along with the member companies, and we gave them. And some of the things are, I'm so happy about it. I see my language, English, out there, which the government is using. So actually, it was my sister and my mom which actually helped me to become really an advocate. I would like to use the word advocate. I would like to use an ally. Ally is a better example, because that gives you a real approach of trying to help the people who are who requires that help. I don't like to use marginalized community, anything like that. It's basically the people who are not so very fortunate as the people who are, who are fortunate enough. That's one aspect. The second thing which is there is one more example which happened. Again, it was in my earlier days in, I think, TVSC or in HP. I do distinctly remember a person was reporting to me. She went on a maternity leave. And in those days, it's only 90 days. Now it is 180 days, right? Now, what happened is, in those days, it was not, nobody knew all this ergonomic chair and other things. She had her legs swollen, poor lady, legs became swollen. And she still used to come to office, and she worked till, her pregnancy, till that she got the pains, basically. But what made me think is, number one, to say that, we have to create a good policies for, maternity leave. So when IFC, International Finance Corporation, came about and said that we want to create a good policy for childcare, right? And it's something where I was very thinking, because I had really literally seen this girl, going through her maternity cycle and then coming back with a child. And we really saw that a good crush facility and childcare is extremely important. And actually that lady, I remember her name, Anvisha, she was responsible for me to think about it. And we did a lot of workshops, a lot of studies across the length and breadth of the country. Visited, I think I must have spoken to 200 women who have basically, just been mothers, young mothers, and going to a crash. And I visited beautiful crashes like Mindtree Crash. And then we came out with IFC, the best childcare. And I think Mindtree will talk about it. Their example is there in the World Bank or IFC's report. And I would say these are the trigger points. Trigger points are the women themselves who actually made me think and change the entire concept of how to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in a different lens. I think I gave a long story for a simple question. So apologies for the other panelists. I think I took more time than what is required.
But,
Thank you.
very, very pertinent and good examples shared by you about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as you rightly put across, I think the Ramya group is a very good example of having a diverse group of students as well as faculty members, teaching, non-teaching. So we are a perfect example of being a diverse group, and also very inspiring stories shared about you, about your mother and sisters. So great introduction and great opening to this first segment. Question of segment one to Farangis.
Yeah, ma'am, as a strong champion of DEI and believing that harmony of diverse thoughts and ideas help an organization become global and flourish as well, can you please elaborate on the inclusive mindset? What factors actually comprise equity and inclusion leading to equality? And of course, this will be based on your experiences as well. So would appreciate that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you so much to the faculty for inviting me to be a part of this panel discussion. I think Mr. Ashok has really given a very nice, simple ways to follow the understanding of what is DE and I. And here we're talking again about equity. So I'd like to start off by giving you all a thought. As a parent, how many of you all would be comfortable letting your daughter go for a night shift job? Okay, so moving from the campus to the corporate, you have a job, night shift job. How many of you would be comfortable allowing your child to go? Not many, right? And it's natural because we have these concerns about safety. Okay, so now if as a company, I say that, hey, I've got this job and it's open for anybody to apply, okay? I'm being equal there, right? I'm not discriminating on anybody who can apply, but I've not put in the support system or the environment to allow anybody to apply equally. So that is what is the difference again coming in for equity. So if I have put in measures like Mr. Ashok was saying, having something about the transportation safety, ensuring that as a company, say if you're in a night shift, you're allowing somebody to have that pick up and drop. You're ensuring that the woman is not the last one who is, dropped off at the home. So those are those little things which can make a difference. That is the equity part of it, which helps move us towards equality. Now, equality is easier to understand, we said. It is just ensuring equal resources to everybody. Now, the assumption here is that everybody is starting at the same point, which is not true. And when people are privileged, they normally do not know what it is for people who don't have privilege because they've already always been experiencing that. So that is the first thing, that people are not always starting from the same point. The second assumption is that everybody needs the same thing. Again, this is not true. Now, for example, in your learning itself, if you look at it, we have different types of learners. Okay, so we've been knowing that 4 types of learners, 7 types of learners. So you've got visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, reading and writing. Now, if we focused on only one type of teaching method, say it's only the visual method, you are providing that equally to everybody. But not everybody is able to take equal advantage of that. So that is where we are seeing that equity is basically understanding where a person is coming from and putting the measures in place to help them be equal. For that, you may need different kinds of strategies. Now let's take gender as an example. When we are recruiting at campus level, a lot of the recruitment we see that 40 to 50% we are ensuring that the gender ratio of men and women is equal. But as we go higher in the corporate, it drops from that 40-50% to 16% to 10% at the senior levels. Now, why is that happening? So that happens because of various reasons, and typically they are the 3 M's that you come across. You talk about mobility, you talk about marriage, and you talk about maternity. Those are stages where a woman is faced with more, I would say, by the societal influence, by things around her, to take a step back and actually drop out of the workforce completely. It's not just that she's going to a better opportunity, but she may be withdrawing from the workforce. So what do you do in such a case? So for that, you need to kind of understand that and see what kind of support system you can bring in place. So if I look at Mindtree, we got a program which is for the early career women. Okay, there we are, in addition to the focus on technical skills, because that's the industry they are in, the IT skills, we also have a life skills coaching. Now, the life skills coaching part of it is to ensure that women can look at it as a long-term career. Okay, they're not just looking at it as a job. The life skill coaching helps them see that, hey, these are the stages that you will all go through. What can you do to overcome the stages? So it's like you're not caught by surprise. You know that you need to build your support system. You take whatever measures you need to put in place. You take the help of others who've been there in the industry before you. So now this program is specifically for women because we know that they are going to go through something like this. So that is again an example of how equity is coming there. Now, some more stats, let me just share with you. Women are twice as likely as men to experience discrimination at work. Okay. Mothers are penalized with a 7% wage reduction per child that they have. Okay. Only 16% of women are board members in the top 500 companies. So with all this being there, and statistics still say that we've got more than 100 years before we can level this gender difference. So if that is the case, what are we doing towards helping close that gap? So there are these programs, as I mentioned, this one. Then we've got programs which are focused on women at the leadership level. They may need something additional to get them out there. So yes, these programs are there, and it's not that, everything is being done for women and it's not being done for men, right? It is to make the environment supportive enough so that women can compete equally with men. And this is not just for women. So there are many other aspects of diversity for persons with disability, for LGBTQ community. Historically, they have been disadvantaged. They've been discriminated against. So again, if we have to build equity there, we have sensitization programs. We have programs dealing with unconscious bias. The idea is, again, you are allowing everybody to understand and create that supportive environment. Which brings me to inclusion. Now, inclusion is being able to bring your whole self to work. If you look at that identifier behind me, that is our DNI identifier at Mindtree. Now, the symbolism of that is for DNI, we focus on 4 aspects at Mindtree. So we've got ethnicity and nationality, we've got persons with disability, we've got gender, and we've got sexual orientation. And in that identifier, you see all the different aspects coming together. So in the notes, in the silhouettes, you can make out the gender. You can see the cane, the hearing aid, the wheelchair of it. And the colors itself are the LGBT colors. Now, the symbolism is also that, a single note by itself may not make much sense. But when you get it all together in harmony, that's when you make music. And all those notes are needed to make music. You can't just have one note and say this is a tune. So that is the idea of inclusion. And the way we talk about inclusion at Mindtree, we again look at 4 aspects of it. So we say inclusion means respect, it means belongingness, it means empowerment, and it means progress. Now, each one of them is very, very important. So respect, I think, is the basic foundation of anything. If people are diverse, you need to respect the diversity of opinions. So respect is essential. Belongingness is essential if you have to be a part of anything, if you have to feel like a part of a team. Belongingness is important. Empowerment, to be able to do what you're here for. You have been hired for something, you've been given the tools to do it, you've been given the authority to take the decisions that you can in your way. And finally, progress, because everybody needs to grow, everybody needs to see how they grow. So that is what I would say is, what comprises equity and what comprises inclusion. Thank you.
Those were some very good thoughts shared by you about DE&I. And we've also understood what inclusion is all about now, Parangis, based on your ideas and views shared. Moving over to the third question in segment 1 to Mr. Umashankar. Mr. Umashankar, you've been working with Avatar Group, and Avatar Group has been doing some amazing work in the DE&I initiative under the leadership of Dr. Soundarya Rajesh. We would like to know from you about your thoughts and ideas as to what is it that the millennials and Gen Z employees and the growing up youth today understand about DE&I, and what information would you like to share with the students who are trying to understand the concept of DEI, particularly when they will be now stepping into the corporate world? Your views on this, sir.
Thank you so very much, and good afternoon, everybody, especially to the future leaders of India who are all watching this at this point in time. And thank you, Dr. Padmaja, and thank you, Dr. Manasa, for this opportunity, and happy to be part of this esteemed panel along with Farangis and we have the show. Talking about millennials and Gen Zs. I mean, Gen Zs, something that quickly I thought I'll just talk about some data points for us to understand, right? So 75% of Gen Z consumers will boycott companies that discriminate against race and sexuality across advertisements campaigns. This is according to the McKinsey study. I'll also give you some other example, which is about Monster done a survey. About 83% of Gen Z candidates said that the company's commitment to D&I is important while they choose an employer. So likewise, there are very many things that, as you rightly talked about, the question what you are mentioned, which is exactly talking about the inequality. In the current scenario, Gen Zs and the millennials are very, very particular, and I'm so happy that your institution has taken a first step in terms of educating the outgoing students. So to get into the DEI aspect, it's very nicely narrated to both Ashok and Farangis about DEI. Let me quickly, cover that point as well. So DEI is an everyday habit. It is not a concept, but it's a practice. It does not limit itself to a company or institution. So it's all about how are we going to be including everybody in our lives, not only at the college, not only at our home, but also in the corporate and our society. So we need to be, when you talk about the journey of DEI, you need to be more observing, and how are you going to be interacting is very key. For instance, if you're going to be observing instances around you, spot the glitches. At work, if your female colleague or a friend is being paid less than you, just observe that. Or is he or she is hurrying home since it's getting late, say 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening. That is not inclusivity. Understand that it is not normal and it should not be. As rightly said about allyship, what Ashok was mentioning, so be an ally to promote the betterment of the entire ecosystem around you. So be aware, where are you? Because the same environment is where you and I are living. So interact with people. Nowadays, when we interact, be it in a conversation, listen first and express next. Because people have anybody for that matter, not only people with disability or members of the LGBT community, everybody has a lot of struggles, right? So they go through different struggles. But let's just take an example of a person from the members of the LGBTQ community. The background in which they come in, they might have a domestic turmoil, which they do not express. Their relationships are very, very complex, which we may not be in a position to understand, people who are not in the LGBT community. And the complex in which they are is totally unimaginable. But when you try to listen to them, I would like to give an anecdote here. What happens is, when we conduct a lot of training programs for people with disability and the members of the LGBT community, and even for the senior members of the organizations, even at the leadership level. While doing so, in one of our programs, the entire team came across as very open and they made comfortable, such that we discovered that one of the very senior members in the team was a gay, and he was so happy to come out of the closet. If that can happen in an open environment, it's an awesome experience for a person to come out in open and say, you are my people. And I'm coming out in open and say, hey, you guys take care of me. The entire team will take care of me. So that is what we should achieve in all the departments, in all our homes, in all our society. When people open up, you get richer and the DA becomes very clearer to everybody. More importantly, we should start the act of unlearning. Unlearning is the first step to learning. Gen Z and millennials have grown up in an amalgamation of different generations, which means residual values and traditional ideas tend to influence and hamper the DEI. So be mindful, observe, and unlearn. Millennials and Gen Z's audiences are bombarded with content clutter and noise, especially on social media. We all know that. It is hard to get what is right. So go for the trusted content and know what you see in social media does not cement your views on DEI. It is merely a projection of partial truth. So as the entire people who are listening to this, you need to be cognizant of the fact you are going to be entering into a different paradigm. From college, now you're all going to get into the workplace. So the workplace expects a lot from you, but now you need to adopt yourself, learn and unlearn, and be an amazing ally. Ally can not only you can be an ally, either male or a female, but you need to be an ally and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Well, those were good thoughts shared by you on about DE and I pertaining to Gen Z and millennials. And I remember you were also telling me what is the language that they should be aware of when they step into the corporate world. So
I thought I'll reserve it for your next question, Doctor.
Yeah, we would. Are you done with that first segment, sir? What information would you like to share? We are done with that.
Yes.
Yeah. So we will move over to segment 2. We had actually kept a break of 2 minutes, but I think we are slightly running short of time. We will skip that short break. We will move over to segment 2, wherein we will talk about the practical implications and case studies and findings from our speakers, wherein they will share about their own ideas and thoughts about how DE&I is being practically implemented in organizations and how this concept is being catalyzed through various initiatives. So my question to Mr. Ashok would be, sir, what efforts need to be put in to build an inclusive ecosystem where diversity can thrive and accelerate business outcomes? And also, what are the various metrics that are required to measure the success of DE&I? We will keep the segment short and brief because we have another segment to move ahead.
So, looking at all this diversity into taking that in view, it's like, one shirt can't fit all. It's something like that, right? So we have to look at a very specialized and targeted approach of diversity. So when you look at, let's say, women itself, at the entry level is vastly different than the middle or at the senior level, right? So the programs are done in such a way that they're customized for that particular segment. That's one aspect. The second aspect is there is an underlying principle that everybody has an equal opportunity. So that is very, very important. And the second thing what they do is majority of them have ERGs, that is the employee resource scope. Now that's a very important element because all the women get together as part of a women network, or all the disabled people, they have a disability network, or from the LGBT community, they have an LGBT community and so on. Now these are very important because they are able to understand the challenges if they have to ensure that they are successful. Main aspect is successful. But to make all these ERGs successful, you require the right sponsors and the right allies, as I would like to again and again mention. And for this, getting men into this is extremely important. And thanks to Dr. Padmaja, this is probably one of the few D&I events I've seen equal men and women, because majority of the places I go, I see only women. There's hardly any men. Okay, so this is something amazing, because if you don't invite the larger pool, because like, the statistics what Madam Faringis shared, right? Only 16% of the people are women in the top corporates board. If that is the data, or 10% as a CEO level, obviously the 90% are men. Invite them because they are allies, they are sponsors. So that is very important to ensure that you are actually removing all the unconscious bias. Sensitization of managers, top leaders is most important to make a good ecosystem thrive on diversity and inclusion. That is one aspect which I would like to really say, and look at it as a targeted approach or a segmented approach of giving the necessary training and sensitizing those people accordingly. Now we're talking about matrices. You'll be surprised that there are enough matrices, and many countries are actually following. And thanks to the new ESG norm, so the ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. The S stands for social. And what is very interesting is many countries have already made it mandatory that they have to report diversity ratios. Okay, especially European Union, they made it, I think they have a format called GRI. It's mandated that they have to report, various diversity ratios, including pay parity and others. So what it shows is equal opportunity, equal pay, and so on and so forth is already being done in many parts of the world. Now, Indian government has come out with BRSR report, that is the SEBI has come out with that. And, it will be rolling out shortly. I'm sure even they will also be following various reporting formats, what is required. Now, so these are some matrices or data points which the companies have to definitely disclose. But currently it is only for the listed companies. It could be New York Stock Exchange or the Bombay Stock Exchange or various other stock exchanges. But what is going to be very interesting is this matrices and other points of diversity and inclusion, every single company, be it even an NGO, will start reporting it, because they will be measured as to how exactly are they managing the diversity and inclusion, because diversity and inclusion directly impacts profitability. And McKinsey report clearly shows those which are embracing diversity are 30% more profitable than the others. Okay, so it clearly shows that, and they are helping more creativity, more innovation, right? And most important is that you are able to attract talent from everywhere. So with that, I would say matrices are here to stay. It was not there thanks to various things, now the matrices have come and many companies have started looking at it much more closely than what it was earlier.
Right. I'm sure we're going to discuss about these matrices in the class also when we teach about diversity in our sessions. Thank you for those points, Mr. Ashok. Over to Ms. Farangis, sir. The question for Ms. Farangis in this section, I think she'll share her practical case studies, sir.
Yeah, ma'am, the question to you is, do you feel there is a resistance to DE&I? How do you and your team respond to this? Follow-up question is, please share a few examples, case study regarding this, and we would definitely appreciate if you bring about some experiences for the storing, telling, as well as the plethora of tools and techniques that you have used in your career. And the follow-up to that would be, what successful initiatives or best practices has your organization, that's Mindtree, identified concerning DEI issues? Yes, ma'am.
So to the first part of the question, I would say at a conscious level, there's no resistance. People know that DE&I is needed, and it's the good thing, it's the right thing to do. They also know it has got financial implications. They know it's more innovative. They know they get better hire. But that is at the conscious level. Now, the problem is most people think that they are fully aware, but there is a lot of resistance to DE&I, and that is at the unconscious level. One is because they do not know, okay, they may not be aware that there is something better than the state that they are currently in, okay. Second is, when there is something different, you are always a little bit threatened by something which is a little bit different from you. And third part of it is the unconscious biases that everybody builds up from their own past experiences. It just happens. Everybody has them. 100% everybody has the unconscious biases. So what I would say is the way to deal with it is by sensitizing people, by creating awareness. Okay. So some simple things, for example, in a meeting, if the woman is always expected to take notes, okay, we've seen that happen. Or, women are interrupted. They're 4 times as likely to be interrupted as men. Or we see people make fun of somebody's gender expression, all in good faith, but it is still happening. So the way to deal with it is to sensitize people, to make them aware. So we run workshops on unconscious bias. We run sensitization workshops. We've got something like a Women Wednesday where we invite the whole organization, but we bring a woman leader to share her experiences. So when she talks about it, when you talk, you build awareness. And when you build awareness, you can break a whole lot of the biases. So I would say the best way to deal with it is, pick up all these examples, pick up these scenarios, have conversations around them, have the sensitization, have the awareness. And that is the best way to deal with it. Another interesting example I can share, as Mr. Ashok was talking about, take the men along with them. Now, we've done so many things which we are doing for women initiatives. So men say, why is it always happening for women? Why are you not celebrating Men's Day? So yes, we celebrate Men's Day as well. We have men's health as well. So different sessions are there to make sure you take everybody along. And along the way, you need to sensitize and educate them. And that's when everything will move ahead. Thank you.
Right. So, great initiatives taken by Mindtree to sensitize the employees about DE&I. Our third question is to Mr. Umashankar, wherein, little bit we'll delve into how the future of DEI looks and how is it that the unconscious bias needs to be handled, how can the gaps be minimized, and also what are the different efforts that need to be made to enable organizations to understand and appreciate this concept of diversity with an inclusive mindset. Umashankar.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice question. In fact, we talked about language. The language matters. Actually talk about firstly, it's non-conscious bias. So it's not unconscious bias. Basically, it's more a clinical term. We tend to use unconscious bias, in the colloquial term, because when somebody is unconscious, right? So it's when their brain is not functional, or in fact, they are at a deep sleep. So at that particular point in time, the biases will not even be there. They're still. So we would like to call it as non-cognitive bias going forward. That's why we also talk about language is very, very important, because each and everybody is interacting with others only verbally or through written communication. Quickly, to just take a segue into what is, we normally, I see people use deadline. It's a colloquial term. It is used for a very, very stringent punishment. If someone has to cross a particular line, they'll be literally dead. So that's why it's called a deadline. So let's be aware of the choices of the words that we are currently using. Instead of using deadline, we may use time frame or timeline. So we need to be conscious of these things. So let's call it as unconscious bias. Avatar has been part of several such organization journey over the past 2 decades, where we have helped leaders to build conviction in DEI. Because at a senior level, a person who is helming at the top, if he or she has a bias, and that will trickle down to the entire organization's, you know, progress. So we do intervention at a very, very senior level with our, you know, inclusion by design, where we include with the help of the senior management, we include them to burst the biases. So ultimately, we empower the second line and the third line managers to bust biases, and we run programs that help men become the advocates and the allies to the cause. That's what we are actually talking about. Gone are the days about 10 years back when we visit some of the organizations, they used to have women groups. So we tell them, why aren't you, bringing in men into the group? Because they are your allies. So unless until they come in, they will try to give you a solution. I'll just give you a quick example. Most of you must have read about the Starbucks case, the famous Starbucks case. One day in April, two African American entrepreneurs arrived at a Starbucks store for a meeting. They sat without ordering. They were waiting for the local businessman to come and join them. The store manager came and asked them, "Would you like to place the order or leave? Otherwise, I might call 911." But they were just sitting and saying, "No, we will do it later." But then the store manager took the call and he dialed up 911. Police arrived and arrested him. The, the, that immediately Starbucks leadership responded by closing all the 800 outlets of their stores in the US. And immediately the team started giving them non-conscious bias training focused on race. So this is one particular example that I thought it is very apt for us to understand. Awareness and knowledge of bias required. Example, if I take currently about artificial intelligence hiring, if you build an engine called the artificial intelligence hiring machine, somebody has to program it and make sure the machine actually selects the right candidates for you to process. While inputting that particular data into the AI machine, if the person who is actually designing it, if he or she has a bias, then you're actually putting the bias into the system, and the output will also be biased. So, for instance, in most of the cases where the sentiment behind the approach is very, very simple. Like, if you were to hire a person, you think that for my organization, the look should be like this, the thinking should be like this, the work should be like this, and the look-alike kind of a person, if you're going to hire, this would result in an unintentional lack of diversity into the organization, which can hinder the entire productivity and not allow your organization to reach your fullest potential. So, non-conscious bias training, the most effective of it training, does more than increase awareness of bias and its impact. It teaches attendees to manage their biases, change their behavior, and track their progress. It gives them information that contradicts stereotypes and allow them to connect with people whose experiences are different from theirs. And it's not just one-time education session or a training session. It is a lifelong journey. In fact, DEI is nothing but, this is a learning that we will go for a very, very long time. and also it impacts structural changes to policies and operations. So it's better that we are aware where we are heading towards. Thank you.
That was a very good experience that you shared about, the example of unconscious bias. Moving over, we will quickly go to the third segment, that is understanding a DEI initiative in the current new normal, and particularly during the pandemic, and of course post the pandemic. How is it that organizations are going to react and respond to the new normal, and taking this concept of DEI forward? My first question to Mr. Ashok would be, so we've been reading a lot of reports and statistics about, there's been a shortage of women in STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And also we've seen that, research and statistics have proven that there are a lot of scientists, men scientists and lesser women scientists. And, so what are the reasons for this gap in STEM education, sir? And how can this gap be filled? Do you feel, you've been in the software, NASCOM for a long time, do you feel that there is a lesser representation of women in technology, sir?
So I think I'll take the last question first, lesser representation of women in technology. The answer is yes. So if you look at the data, NASCOM data says that women currently are contributing to about 35 to 36% of the overall workforce, which is about 4.6 million, which is fantastic, okay? Because I think they are probably the largest in terms of having the number of women. But when you start peeling the onion, you'll see the women in technology come down to about 20 to 24%, okay? Women in technology, which essentially means there are a lot of women, they are employing, but they are in other non-core areas. That's one aspect. So that is the data points for you. But again, if you look at it, the supply itself is a challenge, because when you mentioned ISHA report, you look at it, that's where engineering and technology report is coming out. Although there are about 37 to 38 lakh students, you'll find that women, when you look at it, it's only 29%. So we have a challenge there, right? So the number of women taking engineering and technology is a challenge. So what is really the issue is that we are not having enough, supply side. But I do know that number of firms today are hiring 50%. 50% of the hiring currently is women. Many companies are, at least the large firms, the Accentures, the IBM, TCS, they make it a point to hire a lot of women folks at the entry level. But we have a challenge. And the challenge is a lot of women quit. That's a big leaking pipeline, and they quit because of various reasons. One is maternity, the other one is, child care, elderly care, transfers, and so on and so forth. Now that's something where, great organizations like Avatar and others are trying to arrest that particular thing. But that alone is not sufficient, The reason is, whatever you add, because, 58% of women want to come back, they can't come back because technology obsolescence is very high. The technology obsolescence is every 6 months, there is an obsolescence. The technologies are changing so fast, right? And they take a 2-year break, 3-year break. By the time they come back, the technology obsolescence has already come in. So that's one aspect which is there. So it's not easy. Other thing which I would say is, as far as this particular thing, the shortage of women in STEM is, we don't have enough role models, honestly speaking. So if you look at it, one of the biggest role models for all these young girls out here listening to it is obviously our ISRO people when they sent the rocket or the satellite out there to Mars. That was the biggest, the movie was a big hit, and all those women, hats off to them, they became big role models. So obviously when you said about scientists, we have in India itself in ISRO, where there are a lot of this great Tessie George, I think, and a company, they did a great job. There are role models there. But we require more role models, okay? Because we don't have enough of them. So we have to showcase, celebrate the success of many women. And just like, in a couple of years ago, when I did engineering, there were only 6 colleges, I think, in Karnataka, 6 or 7. Now more engineering colleges have come. But what has happened is, every single farmer wanted his son to be an engineer. So today you find that engineering colleges have come up and the son is actually taking up. Just like that, the roles have to get, the equal opportunity has to be there in society. Society's general parity has a direct bearing on organizational gender parity. So women have to be given equal opportunity at young age. And if you look at 10th standard, 12th standard, the number of girls actually doing well is very high. but the number of girls taking engineering or full-fledged technology is very less. So this one major request I have is please encourage your friends, women friends, for both boys and girls, to ensure that they have opportunity, take it up. Because I don't think as a country we have enough engineers and enough scientists, as you rightly said, ma'am. We don't have, while IT industry has been able to attract and some manage, but we can do much, much more than what is there currently. So these are some of the steps, role models. The society has a direct impact, and whatever is the organization they're trying to do, good crash facilities, getting women back, etc., etc. But finally, it is a society which has to ensure that the women are going back to work, right? So that is something. So events like this are very useful because we are actually changing the mindset of young kids, so that when they grow up and when they get married, they'll ensure their wives or their sisters are actually pursuing not only science career, they're going to continue their career throughout their lives. So thank you very much.
So our second and third question are linked to this, Mr. Ashok. Sir, will read out the question.
Yeah, the second question to ma'am is, in this new normal where the work from home culture has and become an integral part of the daily routine, what steps are being taken at your end to ensure being inclusive? And the follow-up question would be, what are the policy changes that have impacted work? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I think the whole work from home thing has resulted in two aspects becoming very clear. One is the sensitivity to understanding that the person is the whole person, not an office persona and a home persona, which used to be there earlier. With work from home, those boundaries have got demolished. So you'll often find that work is running into home and home is running into work. The second thing is that work from home has also isolated a lot of people from their colleagues. So normally what you'd go for a cup of coffee or you'd meet somebody in the corridor or generally have a chit chat, that has come down. So these two things have really resulted in, what we need to look at for being inclusive. Okay, so one is to build that higher sensitivity to understand that, people have home, office, everything is part of them. And the second is to build meaningful engagements. So for example, if I say, understanding the person as a whole, a lot of times during the pandemic, a lot of the schools were also doing online, right? So you needed the parent, and in most cases it's the mother, to make sure that, the child is getting online at the particular time the school is doing. So it's like, you have children of different ages. So you have stand-up meetings. So typically, if we had stand-up meetings where the parent is expected to be in that meeting, that sensitivity to it was saying, hey, let's not have it at this time. Let's push it to a little later. This is the time we know that parents are engaged, making sure the children network is fine, computer is fine, things are fine like that. That is one of the examples there. Other things are like conversations with managers, conversations with your team. Don't just keep it at a transactional level. That is anyway there. But take the time to stop and ask, how are you as an individual? What are you facing? What is your family situation like? When they've gone through COVID or somebody is down with something, somebody is worried about it. Making time in the day or in the week when you're connecting to first ask about the individual rather than just directly getting into the transaction, into the work. I would say that's also important. A lot of the connects that we are talking about is like, ensuring that there are different things. For example, the whole International Women's Day, which fell on March 8th. At Mindtree, we made it a month of celebration. So we are ensuring that there's a financial awareness session, there is some talk from an expert, there's something that we are doing towards contributing to charity, a lot of different engagements. And we plan it at a time so that everybody or most people are able to join in. So most of our sessions would happen, say, in the evening time, 6 to 7, where you also have, India is just finished, but they are still there. They've got some energy to continue with it. You have US being able to join in. You have Europe being able to join in. So those are the little aspects which will make sure that, it's inclusive. It's not just India-centric. It's not just some location. And from the policy side, I would say the biggest changes that you see is the mindset shift which has happened. Prior to this work from home thing, it was like you needed to be in office or show your face. But the whole pandemic has shown us that people can work from anywhere, people can be trusted. You need to ensure certain measures are in place to make sure the work is being done. You no longer have to say that, person needs to be sitting in front of the computer or at office from so and so timing to so and so timing. That I feel is the biggest learning which we have got from the work from home thing. In addition to that, there are a lot of different things which we've done. We've got gift a leave policy, which is a very interesting one. So if a colleague is in need of leaves, say for health reason or something else, instead of going on a cut or something, we can reach out and other people can gift leaves to them. We had COVID isolation centers being set up at the peak times. We had food delivery being done. It's not just the medical part, but also how do you ensure you're taking care of your family at that time. So different aspects of it, I would say. The thought is keep the person first, and if you keep the person first, then I think you can get the whole inclusive part of it being and managing to work from home or any other location, and it will still work fine. Thank you.
I really love that policy of gift leave, Parangis. This is an excellent policy change that's been brought about in Mindtree. I wish that could be implemented in other organizations also. Moving to the last question to Mr. Umashankar. Sir, I've gone through your website in detail, and Avatar Group has been doing some amazing initiatives in handling that second career women hiring and women who've taken a break due to family pressures, childbirth, or transfers, or transfer to some other locations. So, how is Avatar, and what are your initiatives in dealing with in bringing back women back to work, and what measures are taken by Avatar to handle these challenges and ensuring a strong second career for women?
Thank you so much for asking this question. In fact, we started way back in 2000. So it's about 21 years that we've been running the DEI focus in India. We are the pioneers with respect to second career women empowerment is concerned with respect to in India. We did a research. We are a very number-oriented organization. We want to understand the basis. So we did a research. We found that more than 1.5 million women have taken a break in career and not to return back. So it's an amazing talent pool. So we said, how do we, utilize these talent pool? And that's when we created a second career program. And the first of its time where we went to one of the largest banks and we talked about this. And way back in 2006, 2007, we placed more than 250 women professionals who were first time coming out mothers. They've taken a break in career. So that's something that we've done. And that was the starting point. And now, as I speak to you, the network that we've created is having about more than 4.5 lakh of women in a network, out of which we are proud to say that we have helped 75,000 women to get back into the career. I'm talking about the second career women who've taken a break in career, with the help of more than 71 organizations in India. And this is something that is really growing as the second initiative that what you've done is we've created myavatar.com. It's www.myavatar.com. So that's a portal which is India's first diversity portal, wherein we want to have all the cohorts, be it women, women with a break, men with a break, and people with disability and members of the LGBT community, also veterans and the silver generation. So anybody can come and register here, wherein we conduct a lot of programs here. It's a totally where women can come in and start learning a lot from our portal. There's something called Diversity Digest. This is a quick introduction to the entire, anybody who wants to write a white paper about your thoughts on DEI, you're welcome to do, and you can post in here and we'll be happy to publish that. Apart from this, there's something called segue sessions. Segue sessions is nothing but a smooth transition from one page to the other. So we have done 13 editions. What we do in segue is we again did a research and we found when a woman has taken a break, when she's on a break, what are the things that she is need to improve? There were three outcomes. One was she doesn't sharpen the skill, she doesn't negotiate when she comes back, and she is someone who wants to be she doesn't do the networking properly. So we said, let's just do all these training programs across India. We travel to length and breadth of India and to more than 13 cities. And we have trained loads and loads of women who've taken a back in career. 14th edition is happening on the 22nd of April. Any corporate can be part of it, where we spotlight on the uh, women who have come back from career. In fact, we have our panelist, Farangis is again a second career woman, where she will bring in a lot of her own experience, which will be amazing opportunity for women who are waiting to come back. So because we need the live information, we need the authentic information from leaders who can enable all the other women to come back into the industry. Last but not the least, where we do best companies for women in India initiative that we've been doing for the past 6 years, and this is the 7th year edition that we are doing, wherein the top 100 companies we list, and it is available in our website every year. We are happy to say that 26% was the women's participation when we started our way back in 2016, the women's participation at work, and now it has increased to 33% in the top 100 companies. And our vision is to make it to 50-50 gender balance in the next 5 years. That's the goal that we are, aiming towards. And thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I think those were some great initiatives and great examples shared by you as to how Avatar has been doing some amazing work in helping people cope with the family pressures and, dealing with the persons with disability, and also hiring defense veterans. Meanwhile, I think we are almost coming to the end of the panel discussion. Mr. Kiran, I would request you to go to that chat box and see, do we have any questions? No. Yeah, I think sir has shared myavatar.com. But while Mr. Kandaswamy was speaking, my colleague, Professor Sanjay Chari, and I were thinking, about how is it that we could bring about more diversity in educational institutions? Apart from having a diverse student intake, what are the other initiatives? I think Mr. Papidi is involved with a lot of academic institutions. How is it that more diversity and inclusion could be brought about in educational institutions, sir?
You are on mute, sir.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Sorry, it was again going back to that. Yeah, I think one very important aspect is, just like when you do an attraction in the corporate world, right? You go out of the way to ensure that you put a quota and say, nothing doing, I will hire 50%, come what may. Now, in educational institutions, while meritocracy is important, no second thoughts about it. But you have to go out of the way to ensure that you are able to get those people in. So first is role models of the faculty itself. So faculty itself, you should show that you are having equal men and women. That's most important. That's very important. The second aspect, which is very important, is you will have to start, just like the IT industry and others, they start competing with each other. There is good aspects, because I've seen in UK and others, they have, I forgot the name, they have these awards, that bronze, gold and all. They have that rating for academic institutions on diversity and inclusion. I think that's also equally important to have it in India, which I think they started, but then somewhere or other they left it off. So that you're bringing competition to say that I am and just like we say, employer of choice, I am an institution of choice as far as diversity is concerned. I think that's very important. Third element, which is again very, very important, is you got to create a pipeline. So you are a management institute, right? So it's they finish their degree and then they join your institute, right? MBA. Now, what is very important is at that pipeline itself, programs have to be created so that at the PUC level itself, they get excited and say, I am going to join a particular institute. Now, today that so much of competition is not there. Everybody is, keeping quiet. But if you look at the industry, they go about in a very, very methodical way. They do quiz programs, they do hackathon, they do all sort of things so that they are able to make those girls say, I want to join a particular company. I think in education institution also, you'll have to bring in those same rigor same programs like what they do in that, only then you'll see a movement coming in. Okay, and I'm not referring to the top 52 institutions that, the top 50 like the IITs and all. There it's much more complicated. Actually, it's much more complicated. But in the next level, it's quite easy and it is possible to do it, honestly speaking.
Yeah, as a follow-up question, I mean, on a separate dimension, what we both had was that this is especially meant for Ma'am Farangis Chaudhary, that as we are all aware, ultimately the DEI initiatives have to become a part of the strategic initiatives, right? Because we want a top-down approach to implement all this, right? Given that scenario, what happens in this dynamic mercurial world of ours is that and having been in the industry for more than 30 years, I realize that every time, whenever an organization comes out with a new theme every year, if there is pandemic, it's cost cutting. If there is something else, it's IT upgradation. Then there is some other theme altogether. So when this happens, how do we not lose focus and continue our the focus on DI initiatives? How do we do that? It's a practical problem everywhere. In every organization works its own.
I think part of it is, the culture of the organization and paying a lot of focus on that and ensuring that is always there. So like in my intro, when you had read out, I'm also looking at our work ethos or culture of our organization. And the way we have defined that is, we've got 4 pillars. We say anchored by purpose, caring for people, learning with curiosity, and achieving ambitious results, delivering ambitious results. Now, if you go one level further in that, among the things that you talk about, let's say, for example, learning with curiosity, we are not just talking about educational learning, but learning from different sources, learning from successes, learning from failures, learning from diversity of people and ideas as well. So what we do is, what we try to ensure is, whatever the situation is, our work ethos or our culture is something that we have to keep in mind. That's what we keep reiterating. Leaders keep talking about it. It goes across in different communication. And we've got a separate, microsite itself in Mindtree, where we are sharing stories on each of these pillars. So those stories really help influence people to say, hey, this is what is important to the organization. This is something which we really value. So that thing, it needs to keep going forward. The message needs to be kept iterating. And at every occasion that you get, I think you need to influence people to say, this is what is important to us. This is what we stand for. And I think then, whether it's the pandemic or anything, for example, during the pandemic time, one of our verticals was really hit. If you say travel and hospitality vertical, that was hit a lot. But we were invested with our customers because we said we are anchored by purpose. We want long-term investments, long-term relationships. So it helped us take the right decisions. And it was not a quick, react to the pandemic kind of decision. So I think the culture of an organization will really play a large part in ensuring that, DEI is important at all stages.
I think we will wrap it up, but before we finish, I must express my sincere thanks and deep sense of gratitude to all the 3 panelists. I wish we could continue on, but we have shortage of time, and I would refrain from asking a third question to Mr. Kami. I will give a quick briefing about our various other programs to all the students who've joined us from other institutions, from other colleges and other faculty members from other institutions across the country.
But before that, Padmaja, I just wanted to ask if our panelists can come for a deeper interaction with our faculty, so that actually what happens, you said the kind of sensitization that's happening in Mindtree or what my avatar is doing. So this is okay as a panel discussion, but the kind of sensitization that is required, because when you talked about unconscious bias, okay, so that we see day in and day out with every individual, with everybody, right? So and we have a large number of students and also good number of faculty also. So we have a total employee strength of 75 to 80 employees we have. So probably if that kind of an engagement, would it be possible so that we can just deep dive and start thinking on these? This is only a tip what we got actually, just becoming aware of this particular issue. But the thing is, if we have to start thinking in this direction and trying to implement, because as faculty play a very, very key role in shaping up the lives of students. And if faculty are sensitized enough, then only it is possible to percolate it downward to the student level, because students would be still unaware of many things. As you know, they are just out of their graduation and they are in this PG program. So we need a little more engagement kind of a thing. If you can support us, it will be very good.
Dr. Mansa, definitely, Akhtar will be happy to do a separate program for your entire faculties, because
Yes.
we do this for most of the organizations. So definitely,
Yeah.
yes, we should partner. And in fact, I will talk to Dr. Padmaja and
Yes,
see how we
please.
could make this happen.
Yeah.
Very happy to collaborate and coordinate with you and have you physically in our campus to address our students and faculty. Thank you, Mr. Swami, for that. And we would also look forward to Mr. Pamadi in encouraging us. You've been with a lot of startups, so we would want you to come over physically and talk to our students and motivate them. We have our PGDM program in innovation, entrepreneurship, and venture development, sir. It's a duly recognized course from AICT. We launched it last year. Again, it's an initiative of our Director, ma'am, Dr. Manasa. We've also launched various centers of excellence, which I'll just brief the audience. So we have a PGDM program, which we offer 2 years management course. We have PGDM IED program, Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Venture Development. We have PGP Executive MBA for working professionals, and we have PGP in Financial Analytics. So these are the 3 new programs apart from our flagship program of PGDM. And apart from that, we have various centers of excellence where we drive down various projects and consulting assignments. We have Center for Research, Center for Sustainable Development, and again, I would look forward to Mr. Kandaswamy and Ms. Farandes and Ashok Pamadi to help us understand what are the different projects that we could do in terms of tying up with these organizations and doing projects and consulting assignments. And then, of course, we have the Center of Leadership, all established under the guidance of Dr. Manasa. So I've already shared the details about our institute and other programs. I would still want you to personally come over to our institute, meet our ma'am and faculty members, and with all of us, and take forward more of these initiatives.
So one more center is that BCIC Center, BCIC Ramaya Center for Excellence. So we are partnering with BCIC, Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and we are also setting up one more Center for Excellence called as BCIC Center for Excellence. So we would also like to bring this particular point, this diversity, equity, and inclusion as also one of the mainstays of our institution, so that we would like to work in a progressive direction. What is required for tomorrow's children, that we need to address. So with your support, I think it would be possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wish we could go on and listen more from all of you. I would request Professor Chari to hopefully deliver the vote of thanks and close this session.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know what to say because we have heard so many dimensions right from the very beginning, the concept of DEI and the other initiatives taken at industry, as well as the best practices, and as well as the other dimensions of work from home and the policy changes and the shortage of women in STEM, as well as other places. In fact, one of the organizations where I was working, I do agree with Mr. Pamadi's statistics, but I was surprised that I was in a support manager's role and the entire night shift was manned by women. And in fact, when I was in another country managing some support teams, my entire release throughout the night were operated by women, and they were very, very excellent in doing that. So, though the statistics show otherwise, but I have experience on the other side also. So thanks to all the panelists for wonderful and very pragmatic insights into the whole DEI issue. And thank you, Dr. Mansa. Thank you, faculty And thank you, Dr. Padmaja, for organizing such a wonderful, thank you to all the IT support staff and everybody for such a wonderful experience. Thanks, and look forward to working with you all again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mai Shankar and Mr. Panu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We've taken group photographs, Kiran.
Okay.